Have you ever gotten an evaluation and you felt like it didn't reflect everything that you actually contributed? You worked hard, you solved problems, you helped the team, you stepped up when it mattered. So why didn't that show on paper? In this episode, we're talking about one of the biggest career mistakes that high performers make. It's assuming hard work speaks for itself. Because the reality is, your boss can't evaluate what they can't clearly remember. I'll share why strong employees often get weaker evaluations than they deserve, why documenting your impact is not bragging, and how a simple shift can make your work easier to see, easier to explain, and harder to overlook. All right, let's get into it.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Okay, first, let's hit what felt ordinary and what felt badass. What felt ordinary was getting in my head when I decided to try to level up. I hired a coach who is incredibly good at what he does. And I'm not going to lie, it stirred up a lot of feelings for me. I wondered, am I ready for this? Can I actually do what I want to do? What if I invest in myself and I still fall short? That's ordinary. Fear is ordinary, completely normal. Our ego loves to keep us where things feel familiar, where they feel predictable. It will tell us to stay small because staying small feels safe. But you know it's badass? Hiring a coach anyway. Investing in your growth anyway. Pushing your comfort zone, even though it feels uncomfortable. It's taking that next step before you feel ready. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's refusing to let fear run your life, refusing to let it take control of your decisions. So if you're feeling stuck right now, there's a good chance that there's some fear in there. And that's completely normal. So the question isn't whether fear is present, it's whether or not you let fear drive, if you let it run the show. So I just want to encourage you. You are a total badass. I know you're a high achiever. You're listening to this episode. Keep going. The next step is always scary. But just because you feel fear doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean it's not something that you should continue to do. So just take one step at a time and figure it out as you go. Okay, let's get into the episode. There's an old ancient proverb that says the faintest ink is better than memory. I wanted to start there because that one line explains a problem that I see all the time. A lot of good employees think their hard work will speak for itself. They think if they stay consistent, do solid work, help out the team, solve problems, and keep their head down, then someone will notice. And sometimes people do notice, but not as clearly or as accurately as you might think. And you know what? This is especially true when evaluation time rolls around. Because at evaluation time, your boss isn't sitting there with a perfect mental record of everything that you've done in the past 6 months or year. They are remembering bits and pieces. It's like, heck, half the time you can't even remember what you ate for dinner last night. How are you supposed to remember the whole last year? So they remember recent moments, what stood out, what got repeated, and what was easy to recall. So if you've been doing good work quietly without documenting your impacts, there is a good chance that your evaluation is being shaped with an incomplete memory, not your full contribution. And that's exactly what I want to talk to you about today because it's such a big issue and it's not hard. It's just something to be aware of because a lot of us don't realize it. So I want to talk about why hard work alone is not enough when it comes to evaluation time and why documenting your wins and your impact matters way more than everybody thinks. We'll also talk about why so many stronger employees get weaker evaluations than they should and why this absolutely has nothing to do with bragging and everything to do with clarity. Okay, let's talk about the lie that employees believe. One of the most expensive things that employees believe is that hard work will speak for itself, especially women, because we're taught to be noble or be modest and not let our ego run the show. We're people pleasers, not everybody, maybe just me. So it sounds cool. It sounds mature to like let your hard work speak for itself, but it doesn't always work. And it sounds like something that's believable, but it's absolutely incomplete. And you know what? Hard work totally matters. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't matter. You obviously need to do good work, to be reliable. You need to solve problems, contribute, perform, all those things. But hard work alone doesn't translate to a strong evaluation because evaluations are not written by your effort alone. They're written by what your boss can remember, what they can explain, what they can defend. And that's a completely different thing. They're human. It's not even them doing it out of malice. But I want you to hear that. What happened with you at work or what happened to your boss at work last month? You probably don't know. It's probably the same in reverse. They can barely keep track of you last month, let alone the whole year. So leadership is not just evaluating how hard you worked. They're looking at what they can clearly point to. They're evaluating patterns, trust, readiness. They're evaluating whether they feel confident putting their name behind you. So if your impact, if it lives mostly in your head or in a bunch of moments that were never clearly tracked, then your boss is left filling in the blanks. And that feels very risky, not just to your boss, but to you or for you. It's putting yourself in a bad situation. So the person that makes their impact easiest to remember, they're often going to make their evaluation easiest to write. That matters. They're probably going to be, I was going to say graded, but we're not in school. But they're probably going to be evaluated and get better scores just because they're top of mind with their boss, because they're making their boss's job easier. And just human nature, you tend to like people who make your job easier. So now let's talk about why your boss misses things. And this is something that honestly, most employees never think about. Your boss, they have a fraction problem. They're only seeing a fraction of your work. And it's not because you're bad. And it's not because they don't care. They're not even intentionally overlooking you. But because but because of the dynamic of how leadership works, that's the whole thing. They're managing multiple people. They have a lot on their plate. They have their own responsibilities. They're solving problems above them and below them. They also have to juggle deadlines, meetings, issues, personalities, pressure, and not to mention changing priorities. They're not on your shoulder all day, standing behind you, seeing every single thing that you do, taking note. They don't know every decision you made, every issue you prevented, every difficult conversation that you handled. They don't know the times you stepped up or the judgment calls that you got right. Heck, they don't even know how you made their life easier sometimes. You might have done stuff that like really helped them, did them a solid, and they have no idea. So they have all of this stuff going on. And then evaluation season comes. For us, it's once a year. I don't know how often you get it, but when evaluation time comes, now they have to summarize months and months of your work. So think about it. Do you really want that process to depend on memory alone? Do you really want your evaluation shaped by what happened recently to stand out, to be what makes it to the eval? Because usually that's it. It's like what happened in the past month. So then you're risking it. Like, what if you have an off month the month before the evaluation? That's no good. You don't want it to be about just 1 month. You want the full year, the full term of your evaluation. So ask yourself, do you want your boss trying to reconstruct your impact based on vague memory, vague impressions in their mind? I don't. And my guess is you don't either. So that proverb I talked about earlier, it matters here. The faintest ink is better than the best memory. Because even a little bit of documentation, it beats a fuzzy recollection. Even a few clear examples beat a general feeling of, yeah, she's solid. And that's the thing that many employees are missing. So being seen as solid isn't the same thing as being easy to evaluate well. And here's the thing, think about it. Even if you're solid and that's what they think, what about you decide to go to a promotion in a different department? Or you go to a completely different company. They a lot of times will rely on what was in your evaluation. So if you provide them an evaluation and it has memory gaps in it, like they can only see a few of the things you did, it's not going to fully explain the work you've done. Evaluations are important. So, the best analogy that I can give you, doing great work without documenting it is like building a legal case without the evidence. You might know what happened. Heck, you might have even been there. And you know your effort mattered and that your decisions changed the outcomes. But if the evidence you have is scattered, unclear, goes missing, then your case gets weaker. And it's not because the truth changed, but because proof is harder to present. That's what happens in evaluations too. A boss has to advocate upward. They may have to justify why they rated you the way they did. And they probably have to explain why you are strong and also probably defend why you're ready for more responsibility. And I'll tell you, where I work, if you get an excellent, either an excellent or a needs improvement, I feel like it should be the other way around. Excellent or needs improvement. I'm referring to my hand gestures if you're not watching the video. But if you get one of those, your boss has to write why. They have to just give a description. So it's much easier for them to just say, oh, success, because they don't have to add a comment. And so if you're giving them regular feedback, if you're communicating with them and documenting stuff, they already know. So if you're the employee that has made it easier for your boss and you've documented your impact over time, but another employee has done equally good work, they left no trail behind, then those aren't equal cases. So here's the hard truth. Hard work may be equal, but documentation is not. If you're doing the hard work, you might as well do the documentation. Get the benefit of the hard work you're doing, right? And documentation, it changes how your impact is remembered. So, yes, do the hard work. But then also on the backside, make sure that it's remembered. And you don't have to be loud or egotistical to do this. And so, on that note, I want to be clear about what I am and what I'm not saying. This is not me telling you to brag. I'm not saying you need to inflate everything that you do, and you certainly don't have to become performative. I'm not saying that you need to send your boss a dramatic recap every week. And you definitely always don't always have to be loud or brag about it. That's not the goal. The goal is to make your work easier to see, to remember, to explain. That's different. And honestly, if you're the type of person that's worried about being egotistical or being loud or too much, you probably don't have to worry about it because you're already thinking about it. So it's not going to happen where you're going to be cringe. And I think a lot of employees think document your wins and they immediately, their mind goes to self promotion. And that might feel ick. It's not that. Documenting your wins and your impact is not the same as bragging. And merely by doing it, you're helping your boss out. It's like professional record keeping. And this way you can prevent your evaluation from just being about what your boss remembers in the moment. And then we haven't even talked about what if he's in a bad mood or he's having a bad week or he's stressed out when it's eval time. That's even worse. I can't even imagine how that eval is going to be, even if you're kicking butt and doing a good job. We're human, right? So his mood could change how it's done, especially if you leave it to chance. The whole point is like making sure you don't disappear from your story, that all of your hard work doesn't go undone or for nothing. You work too hard to not be recognized for it. And you know what? I think this is especially important if you've ever downplayed your work or you minimize your role or just let everybody else connect the dots. Or maybe you even always give credit to the team. You don't take it for yourself, but you always give credit to everybody on the team. And let me tell you something. If you leave your boss to connect the dots, oftentimes they won't, or they won't see the full picture anyway. And I think this is where quiet high performers get hurt. They're reliable, helpful, steady, capable, and they're often the one that people count on. They're the ones that can solve a problem without making a big scene about it. They'll step in where needed, prevent an issue from happening before it becomes obvious or before it gets on the boss's radar even. And they're not loud about this. So they just assume that their impact is obvious. And what's obvious to you, maybe even to the people right around you, is not always obvious to your boss. Because again, they have a lot on their plate. And you know what? Your work is easy to miss if nobody names it, if you don't name it, because you can't expect somebody else to do it, right? It's your life, it's your future, it's your promotion on the line. So it's up to you to make sure that they realize your impact. And so, yeah, I push back on the idea like the good will just rise to the top or just hustle and get noticed. Work sometimes, but not all the time. It depends how aware your boss is. And sometimes the person who gets a stronger evaluation is simply the person whose impact was easier for the boss to pull from memory. So, yeah, your boss isn't perfect. They're human. Things like this happen more often than I think you know. And if you understand that, you can move differently. So, your boss doesn't need a guessing game, they don't need it to be a mystery. What they need is usable information, examples that they can point to, patterns that they can recognize. They need enough evidence to feel confident in their assessment of you. And that's a big deal. So, you know what? That's why evaluations are often easier for employees who document their impact. And you know what? It's not because they're better. It's because their case was stronger. It's because they made their boss's job 10 times easier. They laid it out for their boss. It's right in front of them. Same work, different case. And remember, your boss is just human. They don't have to have it out for you to not remember everything. So if one person makes it easier for me to see their growth, their judgment, their initiative, their consistency, their impact, then I can evaluate them more clearly. And it's much easier. I can advocate for them clearly, easily. And you know what? That stuff matters. Because if I ever need to defend the evaluation, discuss if they're ready for a promotion or compare people, clarity is always going to win. The one with more information is always going to win. Every time. Or I should say, the one with more good information. The one with more impact is always going to win. The one where the impact is visible. And you know what? There's an emotional side to all of this. A lot of strong, great employees don't document because it feels really freaking awkward. It feels like, oh, let me give myself a pat on the back. But it feels uncomfortable. So they don't want to make too much of themselves or sound fake, sound self-centered, like they have a big ego. They don't want to sound like Chad, who they work with, who brags all the time. So many employees worry like that they shouldn't have to do this. They just think, well, good leaders will know. Good leaders don't always know. I get it, but they don't always know. And even feeling uncomfortable does not change the reality of things. We talked about that at the very beginning of the episode with fear, right? Just because we feel it doesn't mean we should stop. So, yeah, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it pays dividends. Look, your contribution still needs structure to it. You could say you're making an impact, but you still need examples. So, if you leave all that trapped inside your head or just left with your boss to try to remember, you're just asking your memory to do way too much work. Remember, the faintest ink is better than the best memory. Get it documented. And a little documentation beats a lot of hoping. It's not just wishful thinking here. You increase your odds, I would say tenfold, if you're giving regular documentation of your work, of your impact, not just what you do, but your impact. A few clear examples beat vague goodwill, just hoping that they will know that you're doing a good job. So even if you start small with this or just do a little bit, better than nothing. So if you take nothing else from this episode, take this. Stop assuming your boss remembers your work the way that you remember your work. They do not, I assure you. Stop assuming effort automatically becomes evidence. It doesn't. And stop assuming being valuable and being clearly evaluated is the same thing. They're not. So the shift I want you to make, simple. Do the work. Absolutely. But also make your work easier to track, easier to recall, to explain, easier for your boss to defend. Because come evaluation time, that's what actually helps. Come promotion time, absolutely that helps. Documentation, that's what helps anytime leadership has to make a decision about if you're ready or not. So this isn't about manipulating what people see or what people think. It's about reducing the gap between the work you did and the work that leadership can actually see. And that gap is where a lot of careers, I was going to say go to die, but that's probably a little extreme. They just stall out. Now, I'll tell you, there's better ways to do this, worse ways to do it. There are ways to communicate your impact and sound very awkward. I've done that before. Who hasn't, right? But especially if you're not used to it, like at the beginning of doing anything, it can feel awkward. So there's ways you can do it that are inflated, that can make you sound like you have a big ego and people cringe when they hear you. You could do it that way. And then there's ways to do it that sound clear, credible, promotable. And that is what matters. The goal isn't just to say more. It's to say it well, to say it efficiently, and what counts, to know what counts so you can say that, to figure out how to frame it, how to track it. That way you can make it useful later. And that is a deeper skill set. And I think that's why so many strong employees struggle. And it's not because they don't have examples. It's because nobody taught them how to capture and communicate the examples that they already have. You don't need to do more. You don't need to be more. You already have the examples. You just have to weaponize them, to tap into them. Okay, I'll leave you with this, and you're probably tired of hearing it. Just bringing the point home here. The faintest ink is better than the best memory. If you are doing great work, do not make your future depend on somebody else's memory, on hoping your boss will remember it perfectly or know all of the things that you did. Don't leave your evaluation up to vague impressions. Stop assuming silence is professionalism. And don't confuse hard work with documented impact, because hard work matters. It does. But documented hard work gives your boss something they can actually see. And an evaluation time, that can make all the difference. So if this episode hit home just a little bit, or you want to know more about it, stay with me, stick around here, follow the show if you're not already, because this is the kind of thing that I absolutely care deeply about. I want to help strong employees make their work easier to see, to explain, and harder to overlook. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep showing up, and never ever shrink for a seat at the table, because you were born to build it.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass, and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.